Welcome back to another Chris McPherson Show, Daily Dose. And being a daily dose, we are digging into some sport that is imminent and on the horizon. And of course, Wimbledon is right upon us. And like we did at the French Open, we're going to try and deliver you a daily dose as many, if not all, of the days of Wimbledon as we can. And for as many of those as we can align our schedules, I will be joined by the one, the only, the first serves Christian Monaghan. Good to be back talking Grand Slam tennis, Christian.
Good to be with you, Chris. Yeah, it's that time of year. Wimbledon approaches, and it's going to be one heck of a tournament. Going to be so many matches to keep an eye on, especially the first round, where there's a couple of ones to really keep an eye on because there could be some potential upsets on the horizon. So we know grass isn't suited to everyone, and that's why it's going to be an intriguing couple of days to start off with.
It's always hard to grab that quick snapshot of form. There's not a long lead up with these grass tournaments. They only have a few weeks of the grass court season. And what do you read into it, especially the ones who've won the week before? We always know that can be hard to back up. But as we did with the French Open, let's start with Aussie Watch. And there's a lot of Aussies to watch. So we're going to probably fire through these reasonably quickly. But the first one I want to start with is a former Grand Slam winner, Naomi Osaka, coming up against Talia Gibson. It's going to be the last match on centre court on day one.
Yeah, so I was just listening to Talia Gibson a bit, speaking to Stan Sport early in the day, and she was saying how excited she is to be facing a player of Osaka's caliber. Some people might approach it as, oh, I don't want to face this player because there's less of a chance of me getting through to the next round, but others approach it in the sense that, look, this is a chance for me to grow on the biggest stages, learn from those experiences. We saw Gadecki as well against Coco Gauff at the French. She said exactly the same thing. So, look, I think Talia will go out there with no fear, and sometimes that's where you produce your best tennis, right? When you've got nothing to lose and your back's not against the wall, the pressure's all going to be on Osaka. We know grass isn't her favorite surface as well, mind you, for Osaka, so she'll be feeling the pinch a bit as well. So I think for Talia as well, coming through qualifying, she's familiar with the conditions. Obviously, qualifying they play in Roehampton, not the actual, in the bounds of Wimbledon, so to speak. But still, she's had three matches under her belt over the past few days, and that's a big chance for her to, really test herself against Osaka, who, look, let's be honest, hasn't had the brightest of seasons by her standards at least. We know she's come back from maternity leave and a couple of injuries. So, look, expecting an Osaka win here, but for Talia, this is a big opportunity.
Yeah, I think it's a win-win situation for Gibson, a free hit on centre court. Not often you get to do that. Not often you get to do it up against a big name who's not in the best of form, as you said. You mentioned Olivia Gadecki. She's the next up, and when we have a look at things going through the court order, she comes up against Greet Minnen. Court 4, it's an opportunity for, again, Gadecki. This is a chance where she'd have to, I think she'd fancy her chances to get through here.
She would, she should, but given her form over the past few months, this isn't going to be easy. On paper, you think, yeah, she's probably got the edge, which I probably am leaning towards Gadecki here in this matchup. But I mean, I forgot the number off the top of my head, but I think it was about in double digits that she lost, straight consecutive matches. I think it was over 10, from the AO and then afterwards. So she's been really struggling just to string some consistent results together. There was a couple of games I saw on the grass court swing where she had the match on her racket, but she just couldn't convert her opportunities, especially on serve. And you got a player like Minen, who's been on the tour for quite a while, right? She's experienced. She knows what it takes in these sort of occasions in the first round matchups. And for Gadecki, I think she's still trying to learn her craft. She's still trying to, really, test herself against even these types of players who aren't necessarily, top echelon, top 50, but still, at the same time, this isn't going to be a walk in the park by any means. So I think Gadecki will know that going in. She's going to have to be on top of her game. But again, this is a great chance for her to really get a win on the board. And once you do that, the confidence really just flows on, doesn't it? We've seen that from past players. Alexi Poprin's a good example of past tournaments where you just need that one win to really revive your campaign. And I think for Gadecki, that's going to be the same thing here.
Yeah, I certainly think so. It could be the spark that gets it going. Hopefully it is. We'll watch with bated breath to day one to see that. Let's jump over to the men's side for a couple of matches. Adrian Manarino, who has gone through qualifying, comes up against Chris O'Connell. This is an interesting matchup. Again, two players who at their best can be extremely good, but neither of them probably quite at their peak at the moment.
Yeah, probably for Chris. I mean, a couple of seasons ago, that was where so far in his career, that was probably at his peak, winning all those games in the Challenger circuit. Then he made his way up into the top 100, and from there, he's really had to try and grind it out against these types of players, even like a Mannarino, who's been in the top 50 before. He's very experienced when it comes to these sorts of occasions, right? We know Mannarino as well, especially he's known for his exceptionally low string tension. I'm not too sure if you're aware of that, Chris, but that's one of the quirks that have been involved in his game, which has made a lot of stories, over the past years or throughout his career, I guess. So, yeah, I think for Chris, again, on paper, it's very winnable when you look at it, right? Mannarino, he's another one who's come through qualifying. So, yeah, you've just got to be careful when you come up against those types of players who we've seen countless times these qualifiers come up, and when you least expect it, they produce a couple of upsets, don't they? So I think for Chris, it's about maintaining his serve. He needs to serve big, serve well, not lose serve too many times, because Mannarino is someone who can return serve very well on his day. So for Chris, that should be his number one priority. But if he has that covered, I think he's got a good chance to come up on top of this game.
This is an interesting one too, because if a player in this match with their best available can find that best form and can get it going, they likely second round against Stefanos Tsitsipas, who we know isn't, he's up and down at the moment a little. Then possibly an Andrei Rublev in round 3. So there's an opportunity here for a bit of a run for either of these if they can get their serve going and play. So it's going to be an interesting one to watch. Speaking of someone who might be able to get their game going, Jordan Thompson, ranked inside the top 50 at the moment, 45th, comes up against a Czech. And when we were talking during the week on our weekly show, we talked about the Czechs being dangerous on grass. They love the grass like the Aussies do, and he comes up against Vit Capriva.
Yeah, Victor Braver's been around quite a bit, especially on the Challenger circuit, just trying to break his way through into, those ATP 250 events. And yeah, he's just been sort of lurking around those sorts of tier tournaments. For Thompson, look, we know his quality, right? He's been a top 30, top 25 player before. He's won a couple of big titles, 250 events, especially even last season. But I guess since the Australian Open and that Australian swing, he's been struggling a bit through injury, hasn't he? There's been, a couple of question marks around his fitness and form, which, look, you come into Wimbledon and it's sort of a bit inconsistent, right? He's played a couple of doubles matches as well to try and, regain some form and some match fitness. But so, yeah, this is a game where you don't really know what to expect from Thompson. I'd still give him the edge, just given, the quality should really prevail if he is. He doesn't have to be at 100%, to be quite honest. It can be at 70, 80%. He should still win this match on grass because it's still a surface that really favors his game style. So, at the same time, it just depends how the injury is holding up. I think it was his knee, his last recent injury, that was really causing him some trouble. So we'll see how it holds up on the grass.
We certainly will. It's always an interesting one to keep an eye on these Aussies and some of these matchups. Another Aussie who we've seen at her absolute best in former times, and she comes up against a really tough player who also isn't at their best, is Isla Tomljanovic. She's currently ranked 80th in the world. She'll be out on court 10 in the last match up against Anastasia Pavlyuchenkova from Russia, who's sitting just outside the 50s but has been much higher.
Yeah, it's been a very challenging draw for our Aussie women, to be honest. You see some of those the games that have been drawn out for them. It's pretty brutal, right? I mean, you look at Anastasia Pavlyuchenkova. She's been around the tour for so long now, right? It's crazy to think about her experience and what she brings to the table. She's made countless quarterfinal appearances at slams, even a couple of semis as well. I think dating back to the US Open quite a few years ago. So yeah, she's going to be no pushover, that's for sure. We saw Maya Joint, the fellow Aussie, take down Pavlyuchenkova just a couple of days ago at the Eastbourne Open. So, yeah, she's got quite a few minutes under her legs, which is going to be, my trouble Isla, which we know she's another player like Jordan Thompson who struggled a lot with injuries in the past, right? Just having to maintain her body and be 100% fit. It's just been something that's really lingered her throughout her career, not just over the past few months. So, this is going to be a match where it's going to be about the big serving, who's going to be able to hold their serve the most, and from the back of the court, who can dominate, especially on that forehand side, where Isla on the grass really tends to really play some of her best tennis. I mean, we saw back in 2021, 2022, she made back-to-back quarters here at Wimbledon. So she's familiar with this Grand Slam, arguably her most preferred, even above the Australian Open. So this is going to be a big test for her, but one where, if she's fully fit, she can pose a lot of problems for Pavlyuchenkova, that's for sure.
Certainly can. Another interesting matchup while we're talking, high-ranked players coming up against Aussies. James Duckworth is going to come up against the 25th seed, Felix Auger-Aliassime. FAA hadn't been in the best form, but it looks like he started to find a little bit of a run in recent weeks, getting into a couple of these tournaments, including having a run in Mallorca.
Yeah, I mean, Felix is a strange one, right? I mean, he's always been up there in terms of being seeded for these, types of Grand Slam events. But yeah, looking at his past results, it's been quite underwhelming, right? I mean, he comes into Wimbledon as the 25th seed, but French Open lost in the opening round, and then Australian Open lost in the second round. And you think someone of Auger-Aliassime's talent, it's he can go missing a lot in these types of matches, and that's where you pointed out, Chris, pre-recording, that this could be a potential upset here on paper. I mean, you look at James Duckworth, been around on the tour a very long time. He's just one of those players who can defend really well. He's not going to give his opponents anything, much of an inch. It's about the player on the opposite side of the net having to produce those winners and go that extra mile to beat a player like Duckworth, right? Who does those hard yards, covers the court very well with his movement, and his serve is pretty solid, right? It's not the best in the world, but that's why he's a top 100 player, because he does the little 1%ers right. So um, I'm penciling this in as a potential upset for sure. I think Duckworth can very much at least win a set, and if not more, I think he can topple Auger-Aliassime here.
Yeah, well, it's one of those seeds that you kind of look at in the draw now, as you said, and there's always a bit of an asterisk against his name until he puts the runs on the board, Felix Auger-Aliassime. Next up, let's go to the final two Aussies on day one, and this is going to be back-to-back on court 15. So I tell you what, if you're at Wimbledon or you're tuning into a court on the feeds, wherever you are, then this is a great one to tune into. And it's Kim Birrell, who for up until recently was our second-ranked Australian. She has, as you touched on before, been overtaken by Maya Joint recently. She comes up against the 22nd seed Donna Vekic, who last year was a absolutely watermark year for Donna Vekic. This year hasn't quite been that for her.
Yeah, you remember back 12 months ago, she made the semis at Wimbledon, probably arguably her best season in her career. She won silver medal at the Paris Olympics as well, just falling short there in the final. But yeah, I mean, she's lost her coach now, Pam Shriver. She announced that last week. So a bit of a coaching change in the works there for Vekic, which I don't know, potentially could favour Birrell. We know coaching changes in the past in tennis, that quick turnaround impacts certain players, and Vekic could be one of those who could falter. So it's actually a full circle moment, because if you remember back to the Australian Open in 2019, Birrell actually got the better of Vekic. That was probably arguably the most famous win of her career. That's where she broke out. That's where the Aussies learned about Birrell, learned a bit more about her, where she burst onto the scene, to be quite honest. And I remember she played Angelique Kerber back then on Rod Laver Arena, just soaked in the occasion. And now she's playing Vekic again, 6 odd years later. So this is going to be another big test for another one of our Aussies in Kim. But Kim's, look, on grass, I tend to favour her a bit more, compared to previous seasons. I think she's been able to string some wins together, which I thought, okay, she probably hasn't been able to do in the past. So I think confidence is on her side, but Vekic, it's going to be a very tall order to get past her. Just her sheer power from both wins, especially the forehand side, it's just lethal. And once you can take the racket out of Kim's hand, in this instance, it's very difficult to wrestle back momentum. So this is probably going to be a match where Vekic just gets the better of Kim, unfortunately, for an Aussie perspective.
Well, moving on from the Donna Vekic-Birrell match, the last one on court 15 for the Aussie focus is Alexei Popyrin, the 20th seed, and I'm assuming this should be a fairly straightforward encounter coming up against the local wildcard Arthur Ferry, who's ranked 465 in the world, Christian.
Ferry received the wild card into Wimbledon. I think there was 12 wild card recipients for the Brits, so that's like 23 Brits altogether in the main draw, which is pretty cool for them. But for Popyrin, this should be no drama, straight sets, get out of there, get in the showers, and recover for round two. Because look, the only factor that's going against him is the crowd, right? We know that can play the advantage of certain types of players who thrive in that atmosphere. I'm not too familiar with Ferry, whether that'd suit him or not. Sometimes it can bring a whole new sort of pressure. We know the British press as well, how harsh they are over there. But I think Popyrin, on grass. We saw he took a set of Jack Draper a week or two ago at the Queen's Club Championships. I think, look, he's primed for a big run again. We saw last year he made the third round where he got knocked out to Djokovic. I believe he won a set there as well. So, look, he's been building and building to these sorts of moments where he wants to really make a deep run at one of these slams. The US Open last year made the fourth round. He's just gotten close on a couple of occasions, but the way the draw is panning out here, as I'm seeing it, I think there's a bit of an opening for Popperin to maybe potentially make a run here.
It's interesting. I was looking at how challenging his path to the final is. Round 2, certainly. Round 3, allowing the seeds for where they should. And I say that in inverted commas because we know that rarely happens. But it would be Medvedev in the 3rd, Fritz in the 4th, and Zverev in the 5th. So, look, none of them unovercomable. I don't know if that's a word, but it is now for him. But he'd certainly be the outsider, you think, in a few of those. But you get a bit of momentum, win a couple of matches, the roll Daniel Medvedev, and the confidence might be sky high coming up against Fritz.
Yeah, I fancy him over Medvedev. That's just my personal view on it. Medvedev, we know on grass, just hasn't produced the consistent results. I know he made the semis last year, but he just doesn't strike me as someone who can really threaten you or really hit through on the grass, right? I know defensively he has a bit of struggles there as well on the grass. It's not like a hard court. So, yeah, Fritz in the 4th round, potentially that's where the first real major test will come, right? We know Fritz won the Eastbourne title for a 4th time in his career, which is pretty remarkable. But look, Popperin's got the game to beat virtually anyone on his day. I'd say that with all honesty. He's got the weapons to do so. It's just whether can he do it for consistently the whole game. That's just been the real issue for Popperin in games gone past. But don't be surprised if he can at least make the 4th round here in this tournament.
It'll be an interesting one. Let's move on to some women's matches to watch. We're moving on from the Aussies. And let's start with the 9th seed, Paula Badosa. And she has drawn Katie Bolter, who, again, just purely on rankings before we bring the home crowd into it, is probably one of the names you didn't want to see come out next year if you're a seed, because she's sitting, I think, about 40 or 41 in the world at the moment, but she's going to have a huge home crowd behind her. She'll have a few Aussie fans in her corner too.
Yeah, I think Katie Bolter is one of those players who really looks forward to playing at her home slam. She takes it, in her stride with a lot of confidence. And for Badosa, she's looking at this draw thinking this is probably one of the worst possible scenarios for me, like you were saying, Chris, to draw Bolter. They'll be playing on centre court, big atmosphere, strong crowd. So, Badosa as well. She's just come off an injury, hasn't she? Back at the Berlin Open, she had to withdraw. I think it was after 3 points in the second set against Issa Yu Wang in the quarterfinal. So in terms of her fitness and where she stands, that's a bit of a question mark still to be determined. But yeah, Bolter, I think she can probably take it up to Badosa and potentially even win it, cause an early first round upset here at Wimbledon. So it'll be great for the locals to see that. I think the key here on grass is that serve, because we know Badosa can really breeze through a lot of her service games, right? If she's fit and raring. So I think Bolter just has to really pat that down, not make too many unforced errors, because there has been games in these sort of big moments where she tends to be a bit loose. I think if she can really handle the occasion, not let the nerves get to her, this is a winnable game for Bolter for sure.
It's certainly going to be an interesting one. You look at their records this year, they're very similar, 17-10, 15-10. Similar records on grass. Again, neither of them's probably gone as deep in this tournament in previous years as they'd like. I think a few visits to the 4th round for Badosa. Bolter's made it as far as the 3rd. So an opportunity if they can get it started here. Next up, we've got Zhong Xin Wen, who is the 5th seed this time around, the Chinese star. She comes up against Katerina Siniakova. Now, you talk about names you don't want to draw out. Siniakova will hold some demons for Zhang, because she hasn't won here since 2022, and I think it was 2023 where exactly in this matchup round she lost to Siniakova, who's the world's #1 doubles player.
Yeah, when you mentioned that to me, that statistic pre-recording, I thought, wow, that really struck me. I did not expect that at all. Siniakova, obviously, nowadays is known more for her doubles and going deep in Grand Slams and other tournaments in the WTA Tour. She's not really known for her singles anymore, but still, she can really pose a threat, even for a player like Zheng, who hasn't produced the results on grass that we probably expect, right, from a player of her quality. So, yeah, another sort of potential upset alert on the cards, I reckon, here. Going to be interesting to see which way this game pans out. I'm just predicting 3 sets. I think this one could definitely go the distance. I'm predicting a lot of ebbs and flows in this one. Just you don't really know what to expect. I'm just going to say 3 sets, nothing more. I'm not going to predict who's going to win this. It's really a coin flip, I reckon. This could be a close one.
I think it'll be a great one to watch. As you say, it's going to have ebbs and flows. There's going to be some big hitting. There's going to be some strong serving from both of them at times. It's really going to be about who can deliver the most consistency across those 3 sets if that's the way it goes. So I think it'll be well worth staying up and tuning into. Speaking of interesting matchups that are going to be worth tuning into, McCartney Kessler's been in some good form leading up. She snuck into the seeding, got the 32nd seed thanks to some recent results. She would have had absolute nightmares when she saw the draw come up, and she drew Marketa Vondrousova, a former Wimbledon winner only a couple of years ago, a French Open runner-up, a player who has absolutely big match pedigree but hasn't been in the best of health and form in recent times.
As soon as the draw released, Chris, I went straight to Vondrousova's name. I said, who is she playing? Because I'm predicting a big run from her, and I'm saying whoever drew her would be very, very unlucky. And McCartney Kessler is unfortunately the victim that's fallen here in the first round. I think as a 32nd seed, you just squeeze in, you think, okay, I'm sort of protected for the first couple of rounds. I'm going to be able to breeze my way into the tournament. But no, draws Vondrousova, who we know won Wimbledon back in 2023 on grass. This is her best surface by a mile. She won a tournament, I think it was in Berlin as well, a couple of weeks ago, Vondrousova, the Czech star. So I think she's going to be a real threat here. I think against not only Kessler, but to really go deep in this tournament. I think her serve as well has, it just causes a lot of problems, and it puts pressure on the opponent to hold their own serve as well, and to get through that, let alone stay with her the whole match. She's got so many unique weapons that can really trouble so many of the top players on grass. And to be honest, I think if Vondrousova drew Sabalenka in the first round, I'd be tipping Vondrousova. That's how good I reckon she is in the form she's showing now. It was only 10 months ago that she underwent surgery for that shoulder, and she's come back really strong. Obviously won that title, as I mentioned. And yeah, poor old Kessler, she's going to be in for a tough one, unfortunately for her.
It certainly is, and yeah, I'm definitely leaning to Vondrousova. Interesting when you have a look at how her path, going forward may play out. She'll play the winner of the All British tie, which you'd expect should be Emma Raducanu, so that'll be an interesting one for Vondrousova. And then the third round will be that name you talked about before, Aryna Sabalenka, and that one I don't care what time it is on. I will be putting toothpicks in my eyelids if I need to stay up for that, because I think that, as you say, I think she's going to be a real threat to Sabalenka, and it would be one of, it'll probably be, if we reflect on it, if that's where it goes, it's quite likely that's the match of the tournament or very close to.
She just beat her a couple of weeks ago as well on route to the title. So there you go.
It's an interesting one. We'll watch how that plays out. They've also got Alina Svitolina in their section of draw as well once they get towards the fourth round. So there's some heavy names in that segment. Let's move on to the men's, and we'll fire through 3 or 4 games really quickly to wrap this up. Jensen Brooksby has been in some great form at the moment, as has Talon Griekspoor. They've both come off finals appearances last week. This is an interesting one because they're not two names that, probably 3 months ago, if we're talking about who were you looking forward to watching in the first round of Wimbledon, that they would have been high on your list.
Yeah, these are two, I guess, contrasting styles, right? You go Brooksby, who's got the big game, really backs up, behind the court, can really hit through the ball. And so grass is one of his best surfaces, right? Because we saw he just recently made the final against Taylor Fritz. And then you got Talon Griekspoor, who can really mix it up and throw in a bit of everything, right? So that's where sort of the contrasting styles come into effect, and which can produce a really entertaining and enthralling contest. Probably a 4 or 5 setter here. To potentially maybe go the distance and provide the viewers and the crowd over there a bit of value for money. So, going to be a really intriguing battle to see who comes up on top there. Because, Brooksby is one who, look, he's got all the talent in the world. It's just, can he really push through in these Grand Slam tournaments? It's been a real question mark. Still a young age, still got time to improve and, grow and develop his game. But this is a game where he'll think, look, this is a big chance for me to make the second round and really gain a bit of confidence. But look, at the same time, historically in tennis, if you make a final and you have to back it up a couple of days later, usually the player loses in the first round of the next tournament. But we've got 2 players in that sort of same position. So I guess one of them has to give in and go through. So be intriguing to see who does progress.
Certainly will, and we're going to keep our focus very much on this congested section of the draw for day one. because the winner of that match will play the winner of a hometown hero, Jacob Fernley, and young rising star who probably disappointed a few at the French in João Fonseca from Brazil.
Yeah, Fonseca. I've been reading a couple of comments on social media saying the hype around Fonseca, is it real? Is it warranted? Are there other players ahead of him who should be receiving more hype or more attention? I do look. I guess tend to agree. His results haven't been as like a wow fact. Like wow, that's really like blowing me off my chair as such. But you can't deny the talent there. I mean, you look at some of his highlights, just the way he hits through the ball, just the power and the ferocity in which he's just been, striking the ball. It's just insane and scary to think at only, 18, 19 years of age. Just really scary. So I guess grass, he still has to test himself, right? We know on the clay and the hard courts, he's had sort of better results. But this is a surface where he really needs to prove himself. And this is going to be a match against Fernley, which is going to be no easy task whatsoever. Put aside the home crowd, I think Fernley definitely does have the game. He can throw a few tricks in to really rattle Fonseca and really get him out of his comfort zone. So, look, could be a Fernley victory, maybe in a 4 or 5 sets again. I'm looking at this one because, it just doesn't strike me as someone coming away in this one in straight sets. It's going to be a couple of ups and downs in this one.
It's an interesting one because we know, like as you said, Fernley just emerging his way through, so is Fonseca. Having a look at the two of them, Fonseca won't have any issues, I don't think, with a big hostile crowd. He loves vibes, he loves atmosphere, and I don't think he'll mind which side of that he's on. We saw that at the French Open. I mean, he had the fans behind him. But again, with Greek Sport in their quarter coming off that final, they then go into the next match, the winner of the next match potentially in the third round. This opens up for one of these youngsters if they can get the win here to build some momentum and go through. So it's going to be potentially a survival match, as you say, 4 or 5 sets about who can grind it out. So we'll wait and see. That next match is the 8th seed in Holger Rune coming up against a man who last year was seeded at some Grand Slams, but this time had to come through qualifying, Chilean Nicolas Jarry. Not known for his grass court tennis before, but he looked really strong in qualifying.
Yeah, probably have to take with a grain of salt at the same time. And it is qualifying, was in the 32nd seed position, so probably got a bit of protection there, but still didn't drop a set there. And in qualifying, if you do that and you come in with a bit of match time under your belt, but at the same time not overdoing it and playing too much tennis, you have to think back the third round of qualifying in Wimbledon is best of 5 sets, so he's avoided that, right? Whereas a few players had to go through that grind. I think this is going to be a big challenge for Rune to come up top. We've seen over the past couple of seasons, especially at Wimbledon, where Rune has fallen short where he shouldn't have. I remember back last year, I think it was the game against Davidovich Fokina where they went into a 5th set tiebreak. Fokina should have won that match. It was on his racket, made a couple of silly mistakes, including that underarm serve. I think it was on match point, and lost it from there. So this is going to be a tough assignment for Rune to really get a grip hold on Jarry's serve. And this could be, has a couple of tie breaks written all over it, let's be honest. And from there, it's sort of a coin flip, right? Whether Jarry can hold his nerve on serve and, really test Rune's mentality and, just his experience, I guess, because Rune hasn't made it that deep into these sorts of slams before. That's been sort of the one criticism of his career thus far. So Jarry, don't count him out. He's got the big game, big weapons. We know that. Whoever's watched him before, listening to this, knows exactly that, what he can bring to the table. So, I'm quite looking forward to this one.
It's going to be an interesting one. He has, as we said, dropped right down the rankings. Should he get through this one, he'll likely come against Leonard Tien, who he beat only a couple of weeks ago. So that would give him some confidence. And then, as we said, that can open up a little bit, and he could go on a bit of a run here with his big game. So we'll wait and see how that shapes. The last one I want to talk about in this one, there's some big boys going toe-to-toe here. Taylor Fritz, we talked about, he beat Brooksby in that final last week. He comes up against the big booming serve of the Frenchman, Giovanni Ntesi-Perricard. And look, Perricard, again, not a proven quantity on grass. When you've got a serve like that, you can't be counted out on any surface.
100%. Fritz would have been looking at this draw. I can guarantee you say, what an absolute nightmare to draw this bloke. Just seen aces fly by you every single service game or, coming against it. It's going to be, one heck of a battle. Fritz, albeit he's come off that title, so probably not going to be, in top condition or, as fresh as he'd like to be. But in saying that, Petri Pericard has been pretty disappointing, hasn't he, in the past few tournaments where you'd expect to be better? I mean, got knocked out by Damien Juma at Roland Garros, which is a really unexpected result. So he's just been throwing in these performances where it's just been very underwhelming at times. And Fritz, he's the type of player who just needs those couple of openings, especially when returning, to really get a grip hold of the match. And from there, he's usually a good runaway leader. He takes the game in his stride and should basically serve it out. And hopefully for his sake, Petri Pericard isn't serving as well, because if he does, despite being a grass, clay, or hard court, it's very tough to counteract. That's for sure. So it's going to be, it's going to be a game of aces. Not many long rallies, that's for sure. So if you're a tennis neutral or a tennis fanatic who loves to see those long rallies, and this is certainly not the game for you, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think maybe stay away from Taylor Fritz for the first couple of rounds, because there's a good chance he comes up against Canadian Gabriel Diallo in the second round as well, which will be much the same. Diallo tipping the scales well over 2 metres, and very similar to Petri Pericard, where they're both just quite mercurial and at their absolute best. Like, they can just bomb anyone off, as long as they can fight back against the serve. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see. But Christian, we have dug really deep day one. Lots of Aussies, so it means lots to talk about. Looking forward to digging into day two with you in the coming day, and as the Wimbledon tournament unfolds, seeing some of those great storylines that unfold. And of course, if people want to check out more of your work, the First Serve will be covering everything from Wimbledon from day one through to day 14.
Perfect. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it.